we have. Welcome everyone to the DLH Writers Panel Stories of Resilience. I'm so excited to have with me actor Keir Gilchrist, who you guys probably know best as the star of Atypical. Thank you, Keir, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And we also have Valen Kiefer, who will join us in just a little bit. This is a panel, we do these panels to kind of help writers to tell even better storylines and, couch organ donation into these broader themes and themes of resilience. So organ donation a lot of times gets pegged into things like, horror and sci-fi, but the truth is when I listen to these stories of organ donation and transplantation, really they sit in the realm of resilience. And if there's any show on television right now that to me represents resilience, it's Atypical. Do you feel like that too?
Yeah, no, I think that's been a huge theme on our show, and each season has just been like another opportunity to kind of take that theme further and push the envelope with resilience and especially for Sam overcoming obstacles and basically and that's true for all the characters, not just Sam, but especially for my storyline.
Yeah, a lot of what we see with Atypical is that Sam processes the world differently than, his neurotypical family members and friends and things like that. But the idea of resilience and being able to kind of cope with a crisis, I looked up the definition of resilience, and it's the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. And then there was another thing that added to grow from those difficulties, because Sam does have to process things slightly differently, but he really does grow every time he's faced with a challenge.
Yeah, no, and I think that's something that's very true for a lot of people that I've spoken to who are on the autism spectrum. A lot of behaviors that sort of like come more easily to neurotypical because of the way our society is set up have to be more learned and have to be taught and learned. And people on the spectrum often have to like make a concerted effort to adjust their social skills for other people. That's, I think, something that's interesting too, is it's like, it's mainly the world that is not necessarily set up for people on the spectrum, but they also have, a lot of strengths in that regard. And Sam actually has a lot of strengths that a lot of the other characters on the show don't have, in his ability to sort of move past things. And on one hand, he has difficulties that they don't have to face, but on the other hand, he also at times is able to step up in ways that other members of the family and his friends aren't, and kind of just, take on things and also, brush things off in a way and just keep moving forward. So it's an interesting kind of push and pull, and
Yeah, I think even in this last season when Sam was just really kind of, I don't want to ruin it for anyone, but really got clear about Paige, and what Paige was going through, and had to make some difficult decisions about their relationship. But he was able to see kind of very clearly what she needed, even when she wasn't able to see it.
Yeah, no, I think, and again, from a lot of people I know that are on the spectrum, the ability to like sort of emotionally detach and put logic first is actually a huge advantage. It's interesting. So Dave Finch, who wrote Journal of Best Practices, which was a huge sort of my like Bible for understanding how Sam could possibly, interpret the world. And he and I became really close because, I talked about it in an interview, and he reached out to me and was like, "Oh, it's amazing you read my book," and ended up becoming a consultant on the show and has been consulting since season 2. And then we've created a, relationship. He talks about, one of the things, he goes out and he does a lot of talks, podcasts, and things about how employable and people with autism are actually, and how often workplaces are just not designed, small adjustments, for example, like taking out fluorescent lighting, and replacing that, which can be very difficult for people on the spectrum. People don't think about it, but people with autism have a ton of strengths as well. And that I think it's often, there's been a real effort to shift the idea of it being like a disability. I know a lot of people do not really consider it to be, because, there are a lot of strengths. It's really society that isn't set up for people on the spectrum. But, again, I don't know. It's a very interesting subject for that reason.
That memoir that you said, you've referenced that several times in interviews that I've read and seen. That memoir by David Finch was really just really important part of how you prepared for that role on Atypical. I have a question from Jacob Payne that said, how hard was it to prepare for a role like that? And were there other things that went into preparing to create this amazing character and do it the justice that you knew it needed to be?
I mean, I will say this, and it was the biggest challenge and responsibility I've ever had in my career. Definitely before and since, and I felt a huge weight and pressure to do everything I could to make sure that I did the part justice. And there was a lot that went into it. I mean, even before, because I read the book after I'd already booked the part. But even, in the audition process, I was lucky enough to sit down with the creator and have a really long conversation before I even went in. And then we had tons of auditions. We were working through it and trying different things. But even at that time, reading articles, something that was really helpful to me was actually watching a lot of YouTube videos of people on the spectrum describing in their own words what life was like for them, and how it maybe differed from neurotypical people. There were a lot of great videos actually out there. I wish I could remember, but I just sort of was typing, doing this like deep dive of, and that I thought was kind of one of the more valuable things that I did, as well as, I just also had a lot of personal connections to people on the spectrum and have asked, in the past, had some very honest conversations with friends of mine who are on the spectrum and been like, so what is this like? What is that like for you? So yeah, it was a lot of different little things. And then I had a lot of help as well. And, when you're an actor too, you're basically pleasing the people in charge and going, is this good? Do you like this? Did I do this right? And so you're never really alone. And but a lot of different pieces of different little things. And I also had great people, writing for me as well.
It's interesting because mostly we talk to writers and about their process and how did they, because one of the things you said to me yesterday was, you're like, I read the lines.
Yeah.
There's a lot you can do as the actor to prepare for a role and to present that character as authentically as possible. But like, you read the lines. And so it is interesting how much work you did in terms of being able to look at the videos. I will say, for anyone who's in the donation and transplant community watching, we get videos through, we have an app called the DLH Activate app, and we have these questions of transplant recipients and donor families that we ask very specific short questions, and then we post them to Access DLH in order to help writers. Just like what you're saying, there's one thing about reading an article about someone with autism, but actually hearing the personal stories from these people, it helps writers, it helps actors. So it really, these real life stories help Hollywood to create more authentic and deeper characters. So you yourself, Sam and Paige and Casey and Zahid, everyone was dealing with issues, especially this season. Everyone was tapping into resilience. And And it seems like what tied all of them together was tapping into this support system, and the support system of friends and family. One of the things that I read about resilience was it takes self-awareness, mindfulness, self-care, positive relationships, and purpose. And I think I saw all of that in, in the characters with Atypical. But how have you had to tap into resilience for you personally, not just the character, but you as Kier?
Um, well, having this career trajectory and life that I've had, which is odd. Like I've been acting for 18 years, started when I was 10. And it's not a like normal path. It can be very lonely because not a lot of people understand exactly what you're going through, even people who are right there with you. And it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of rejection. Like most actors will talk about it. You go out for 100 auditions and maybe you get one, and it's hard to not take that personally. It's hard to not know where your next like paycheck is coming from. It's hard to yeah, I mean, there's a lot that goes into that, and then it took, it was a huge strain on my mental health growing up, and fell into like pretty serious depression very young, and struggled with like self-harming, and in like high school, and needed therapy younger than most people do, and then developed like an anxiety disorder much younger than most people do, and ended up in the ER a couple times, like having like full-blown panic attacks. I forget the medical term, but I get the full where I can't feel my face, and everything goes numb, and like I thought I was having a stroke or something the first time it happened, and literally like crawled into the ER in Hollywood, and I was just like, help me, I'm dying, basically. And because I'd never even heard of that, especially for somebody, I think I was 22 or something like that. And it was actually not funny, but almost funny. They sat me down. They were like, "You're having a panic attack. You need to breathe." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm trying, but I can't." And they were like, they literally asked, they were like, "Are you an actor?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they go, "Okay, yeah, we get a lot of you guys in here, like in the same situation." Which again, I've always been able to laugh at like my lowest moments, but I think that actually kind of helped me come out of it. But yeah, and then having that anxiety compounded with being on set, like one of my biggest triggers for anxiety is being on set. So it's like literally my career and my job trigger my worst states, and like I've had to fight full-blown panic attacks while everybody's waiting for, like, you're trapped there, you can't go anywhere, you need to perform, everybody's waiting on you, everybody's like fussing over you, everybody needs you to like come through, and that the panic starts, and then I've had to like pop out of van just to like get through the day every once in a while, and it's a lot, and it's gotten better, and like as I've gotten older, I've learned way more strategies, and it's actually gotten very manageable now. But yeah, so I guess it's taken a lot of resilience, and when, like you said, with reaching out for help, that was a big part too. I used to keep it to myself, and now I'll just literally say to somebody on set, I'll be like, "Hey, I'm really anxious right now, and so I need XYZ. I need another 15 minutes, and I need to go take a walk, or I need to. Sorry, can you go in my trailer? I'm gonna need an Ativan to get through this day. Not every day, but every once in a while. And so, again, reaching out for help, and that all that is definitely true for me as well in my personal struggles."
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, and to be so open about it too, because I think that's something that a lot of people, especially actors, probably keep a little bit, close, and then not being able to be honest about what you need doesn't help you to find the resilience that you need, right? Like being able to
Yeah.
actually say what you need and how people can support you is a big part of finding resilience in your everyday life. And do you find that with your characters too? Characters you've played?
Yeah, no, I think all of the characters. I mean, what's interesting to me about when you're watching, whether it's drama or comedy or whatever, I've also done a lot of like family stories. What's interesting is seeing how those characters, build on top of each other, work together, support each other or don't. That's where the interesting drama comes from. And so, like, yeah, like United States of Terra, we kind of dealt with that. Another movie I did, it's kind of a funny story, is a lot about mental health and about a young man who ends up, you know, uh, needing to go to a facility for his mental health and his suicidal thoughts. And through that experience, meets all these other people, which kind of give him perspective on his life and, advice, and is able to come out, a much stronger and able to, handle his situation. So I've dealt with a lot of these kind of stories. And I think often a big part of that is always, characters needing to work together to, become stronger. So.
Right. I mean, Hollywood, overcoming adversity is sort of the bread and butter of Hollywood, right? Is overcoming adversity stories, and having a character that's able to dig deep in order to face and grow from the adversity that they're put in front of. Which takes me to Valen.
Hey.
Hello. I'm living real life patient this morning and going through how to tap into resilience. I will give a firsthand experience today. So that's why I've been here, but I've been taking my blood pressure, and I'm having having both my kidneys removed messed with my blood pressure. And so I have trouble controlling it, and I'm having like a really high blood pressure episode this morning. So I've been sitting here, but taking my blood pressure behind the scenes, trying to take medicine to lower it down. But I had to pull through because I have been so excited to meet you here and for today. So this is I've been really excited about this. So thank you for doing this with us.
Oh no, thank you for being here with me. I'm stoked.
So Valen has been through a few things, not just blood pressure issues this morning, but a kidney transplant, a liver transplant, a few other things. And so when I saw those 5 things, that it's called the Bounce Back Project, and they talk about these 5 things you need for resilience: self-awareness, mindfulness, self-care, positive relationships, and purpose. And it felt like those were really things that because you project, Valen, into the world, the things that you're dealing with and overcoming, to kind of inspire other people to be resilient as well. But I'm, wondering if you could share with us some of the times that have been maybe, the hardest, the darkest, and how you were able to kind of dig in to bounce back.
And I think even this morning, that determination that you don't want something to hold you back. And I was like, I refuse to miss this morning. It's like, when you have these things happen to you, it can be really difficult and frustrating. And when I think of resilience, you can sometimes think of it as some big event, like you were able to get through a transplant or do something large. But for me, resilience is the day-to-day, like today, being able to overcome the small things each day that come up, and being able to take each day at a time and work hard to live the best quality of life. And for me, I've been faced with a lot of health challenges. And I was thinking of, there's a lot of them that have required me to dig really deep to try and get through. One of them that I think really exemplifies who I am as a person and with my husband, Noah, is before my liver transplant, I was really sick with sepsis episodes, which is when you get a blood infection. And I kept getting them time and time again, and we couldn't figure out the cause. And the one time when I was in the hospital, I was supposed to go and receive the Bounce Back Give Back Award from the Chris Klug Foundation. So it made me think of it with tonight, you saying about bouncing back. And for me, it's always important to have something to look forward to. And this event was something that I was looking forward to. And for me, being really sick, it's so good to have that positivity to keep you going. And so we were days away from going to that event, and all of a sudden I got sepsis again. It was in the hospital, and it was like, no. And I found out that family was going to fly in for the event, and this was something really important to me. And it was like this morning. It was like, I'm going to miss it. And then you're like, no, I'm not going to miss it, because I fight really hard for a good quality of life and to do things that bring me joy. And my husband and I were in the hospital, and all of a sudden he types up on his phone infusion centers in Aspen, Colorado, and holds up his phone, and they're like, they have infusion centers there. Because when I had sepsis, I had to get IV antibiotics through my port. And we had already been through several of these sepsis episodes. We knew the deal to get through it. And all of a sudden I'm like, we're going to go. We're going to make this happen. And I told all my doctors how important it was for me to do this. And we coordinated everything, and we made it in time for the event. I went every day to the Aspen Infusion Center and got the medicine that I needed. And we got to the top of the mountain in Aspen and received the award with friends and family. And I was super sick, but found a way to continue to take care of myself so I could keep moving forward. And I think that's what life is about, just one step and one day at a time, and making sure that you're still finding joy throughout all of it. I think sometimes people think, oh, when this happens, I'll be happy. Or if I accomplish this, I'll be happy. And I try not to focus on that and just find my happiness and joy in day to day, no matter what's going on.
Kier, it's interesting because you were talking about how like actually being an actor and being on set creates anxiety, but you've been doing this for 18 years. It must also bring you joy.
Oh yeah. No, it's definitely a mix of things. It's not pure anxiety, and some days I don't even feel it. Sometimes I'm having fun. Some days really suck. But yeah, I mean, I love it. I mean,
Why do you love it? Why do you love it?
Oh, well, I mean, to get to, I don't know. It's such a it's like, I guess with any art form, skill thing is challenging. And so when, overcoming every job is a different challenge, every character is a different challenge. Overcoming that and proving to myself that I'm able, and doing it justice is kind of, I guess, sort of addictive, that constant, like, challenge. It's always different. And I mean, I do love, like, it's a pretty cool career. I mean, you get to work with pretty incredible people, and learn a lot every time from different people. And so, and just because I don't think anything that is good is supposed to just be easy either. So like, it's not to say like, just because it gives me anxiety means that like, it's not worth doing, because I don't think life is always just going to be some comfortable, easy thing. And there's always going to be challenges that arise with anything that's worthwhile. And so I guess, yeah, just because it's a trigger for my anxiety doesn't mean that that is necessarily like a terrible, bad thing, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm Val, and I'm sure you can, relate to that as well. I know there's a lot of ways that you actually related to Sam, the character Sam, and to Atypical. You want to talk a little bit about how you're kind of overcoming adversity, which had nothing to do with, you're neurotypical, but you felt connected to kind of the challenges that the characters and the writers, and obviously Kier as an actor, portrayed.
Absolutely. Kier, you were brilliant. You're an amazing actor. And my husband and I just loved Atypical. We adored Sam. And once again, I am doing living proof this morning, because Noah, my husband, just walked in the door because of supporting me and trying to get through this episode. And I loved that about Sam's family, how they instantly dropped things and supported them. And for me, my parents and Noah, that love and support, being surrounded by that, has been huge in my life. And I love that, like the fierce love of Sam's mom. I mean, she just, the way she loved him, I really connected to the kind of the timeline of Sam's growth, of how his mom supported him when he was younger. He sort of came into his own, and his dad sort of came into the picture a bit later when he was older, and him finding support with the autism group, and all of that I really connected to. And also, I think the struggle of friendships and people understanding what he was enduring. But when I was younger, it was in high school, I had the same thing of being different and feeling like it was hard to connect. That aspect really touched me. And I think um, I loved him creating Little Dude, finding those coping mechanisms, and how when he was going through something, it's like art was his passion and helped him get through it. And then like you drew Little Dude to almost let you see he could do it so you could do it. And I think I think Sam having that outlet, I really connected to, because for me, my patient advocacy is my outlet, and having something positive to focus on. And the whole looking forward to something, like you're like Sam's passion being, I'm saying you, sorry, I see you.
Whichever, you know.
Having the passion of penguins and Antarctica, and your determination to get there and taking the steps to do that. And I really connected to all of those emotions, and that was your positivity and something, you know, to focus on, and that passion. And that's what I have with patient advocacy. And visualization is so important for me too. It made me think of before my liver transplant. Every morning I would listen to the same song that had positive lyrics, and I would imagine myself dancing healthy in a field of flowers. And I had that image every morning. And I think that gave me something to focus on, of like, I'm going to get there. That's going to happen. And now it's amazing to be on the other side of transplant and having that happen. I just really enjoyed the growth of how Sam evolved, and the friendships and the love surrounding him. And that I was really touched by that, and connected it with my own journey of how I grew from, you know, being pediatric care and my parents taking care of me, to becoming my own advocate, to now, you know, helping other people. And I think it's just neat to see that, whether being on the spectrum or being a transplant recipient, there's so many parallels, and it just shows that anyone going through challenges, we can connect. And I think that just shows how important it is for us to support each other and have empathy for what a lot of people are enduring.
Yeah, it goes back to that idea of purpose as sort of a foundational, piece, where Sam had a sense of purpose in terms of being able to get, once he was like, I'm going to Antarctica, he's like, this is what's happening. I have purpose. Now I'm going to, where's the focus on how he was going to, kind of that journey of where he was going. And yeah, patient advocacy, your ability to give back to others and inspire and help other people on their medical journeys as well. Purpose being such an important part in real life and for characters as they're going through adversity. There's a couple of things in the chat, just wanted to highlight that a couple of people have really felt that they connected. My brother has high functioning autism, and I really struggled to find anything close to relate to him until I found Atypical, especially for me as an older sister of someone with autism. Love the show, and Carrie, you did such a great job of really making something so challenging to describe to make so much sense. So big thank you. Have you heard that from others too, where, after you play this character, that people felt like they had a better sense of journeying with someone who was on the autism spectrum, that they were able to have a better understanding or deeper relationship with people in their own lives after watching your portrayal of Sam?
Yeah, I think more than almost any other thing, if I'm out and about and meet some person on the street, I think that's the most common thing that I hear from people who come up. If they go, oh, hey, I really love Atypical. It's very often the people who feel, they really want to come up and talk about it. It's like my son or my daughter or my brother and my sister, or I have a nephew, and this like really brought our family together. And, who was it? Someone was telling me recently that they actually had, I think, a son on the spectrum, and the father was kind of estranged and didn't really understand. I don't think they lived together, and had a very hard time trying to connect with his son. And she actually basically said, "Hey, I really want you to watch this show, because I really want you to watch this. Just watch it and tell me what you think." And it like totally, I'm not saying fixed their relationship, but all of a sudden it really clicked with the father, and he completely shifted gears and made this huge effort to finally understand his son. Because I think it's hard when it's something like autism, even if it's high functioning, if it's a whole spectrum. It's hard because it often can feel like you just don't know how to break through this barrier, this like social barrier. And I think the show did a really excellent job of like putting you inside Sam's head and realizing, just because on the outside it may seem like this person is kind of not engaged with you, there can be a lot going on that you can't understand unless you make those efforts and take those extra steps and do. It's like I was talking about earlier too, with even like what Dave Finch works talking about, with employing people with autism. It's not that people with autism, in fact, they'll sometimes excel far beyond any of their neurotypical coworkers at a job. But if you don't take the time to create an environment that's, that takes these extra steps for them, like they're not going to be able to, keep those jobs, or even people don't think they can have those jobs. So yeah, I think, yeah, I really, I'm stoked that that I've heard that so many times from people. And yeah, I mean, being an actor, you never think the work you do. I never went into this thinking like, I'm gonna, help people, connect with their family or whatever. But I'm so happy that that's just a huge bonus that I've been able to accomplish with this job,
Well,
especially.
and I have a theory, with Hollywood, because Kira and I know each other because on United States of Terra, my mom was his studio teacher. So grew up in the entertainment industry and all of that kind of thing. And a lot of times people in the industry feel like they're just kind of making stuff and they're not sure if it's really helping the world. But I do feel like whenever you're able to, now working for a nonprofit organization and like working with the entertainment industry, I do find that anytime that I offer people in the entertainment industry an opportunity to do something good, right? Like connect with the organ donation world, or do a PSA about organ donation, or, help in some way, be a source of contribution to the broader community, that Hollywood people, the entertainment industry wants to do, people in Hollywood want to do good things. And so when their work can align with something greater and something more impactful, it's really powerful. Do you feel like that too?
Yeah, no, I mean, I of course, there's lots of people who are also very selfish, I'm sure. But I think by and large, most of the people, I mean, that's the thing too with like Atypical, I think, and this is often the thing with film, people see the people they see on camera, maybe they know who the director is if they care, and they just think that's it, right? Like it's like you wrote, directed, starred, and made the whole show, you're the face of it. But like there's so many people putting so much love and concern into like for Atypical, for example, there's so many people behind the scenes that put so much into the show, even like the amount of people that have come in and out of our crew that have a child on the spectrum, or who like the show means so much to them as well. And even like Jess, who's our props master, even from day one, she was like, hey, I just want you to know, my son is on the spectrum. And she's just like super mom, does like so much for her son. And even down to like, she photocopied, he had his own notebooks which he would use to write and draw. And she photocopied them for me, and brought them and was like, here, you can have these photocopies. You can ask me any questions you want. She would bring him to set. And that's just one example. And there's many more of people in the industry just on this one show who did that extra work that they didn't even need to do. And I think it's unfortunately rare, because a lot of stuff, you don't necessarily have the opportunity. You have to pay your bills. But when it like aligns and you can do both, I think that's the ideal situation. And I think a lot of people are definitely willing, and would love to do that. It's just, that's why we need more content like that, I think.
Yeah. Valen, do you think that going through the first transplant that you went through one transplant, and like you said, you were a pediatric patient, so this wasn't just like one day when you were grown up you started having health problems, like this really started. And what you were saying too, in terms of with Sam's character, with the mom Elsa really being involved, I read a lot of things, and it's like people may have had issues with atypical, like some issues with it, but almost everyone related to Elsa as this mom that was so dedicated and so involved and engaged. But like, do you think that having gone through the first transplant helped you stay positive for that second transplant? Meaning like having gone through something so momentous, then when you were told, okay, you would need a liver transplant, that you were able to kind of hold on to that in terms of the resilience to see through to you dancing in the field?
Absolutely. And when Sam's mom said about like every time the phone rings, how it just triggers her, my mom says the same thing. Like if I call it an off hour, she still to this day instantly goes to the something's wrong versus something's positive.
Right.
And you just going through so much trauma, it stays with you in some capacity. And for my mom, both of my parents are extremely supportive. My dad worked full time. My mom took care of me full time. So she was the main support person growing up. And then it was interesting with Sam's parents, how the dad came into play as he got older. And the same happened in my journey as well, because by the time I got to being 18 years old and I spent about a year in the hospital, my mom was just honestly fried. And it was really hard for her to see me continue to go through so much. So my dad almost stepped in at that point. And we were devastated when we found out I needed a liver transplant in my 30s. I mean, we thought, okay, I went through a teenager and getting a transplant that hopefully you wouldn't need anymore, potentially another kidney later in life. But having gone through it already, that knowledge made a huge difference in being able to endure a liver transplant. I think about the medicine, just learning the medicine in itself is so overwhelming. I took about 40 pills a day after my kidney transplant, learning what they are, why I need to take them, what they do. And I was fully educated. After my liver transplant, the pharmacist came in and you're like, okay, Prograf this and prednisone this. And it feels like he's talking to a colleague versus a new patient. So that's so important. It shows how powerful knowledge is, experiences. And I think that's the importance of storytelling and sharing, because we're giving people a visual of how someone can get through it and how a family can rally together and support a person. And that's why I strive to share my story, for the same reason of how amazing it was for us to learn from Sam's character, is because it gives people that visual and that hope. And I had that almost from my own journey of, okay, if I can get through it once, I can do it again. But of course, there was a lot of fear surrounding that, wondering if I'd be lucky enough to receive a second miracle. I felt amazing. It was amazing. I got a second chance once, but who gets a second chance in life? And to receive that again was just incredible. And when I woke up for my liver transplant, I had this renewed sense of gratitude. It's like I could feel the energy of it. And gratitude is is really connected to my resilience. Me being able to live a very grateful life, focus on all that I'm thankful for, really helps me to be resilient.
It's interesting because it's not one of these 5 that bounce back lists, but I really think that it probably should be, because especially working obviously in the donation and transplant community, I always say transplant recipients are the most grateful people you'll ever meet in your life, because you guys are keenly aware. I mean, unlike when, you know, I needed chemotherapy, it was there for me, right? Like it was just there. I got it and it worked and it was great. Like with a transplant recipient, you're told you need something to save your life, and it may be there or it may not. We're not really sure, and you're just going to have to wait and see, you know?
Yeah.
And so even being able to stay positive through that, you know, there was one television show where the person was told that they would need a transplant, and the character said, well, does that mean someone has to die for me? And I'm like, oh God, please no, you know, no, but it's still, you're waiting for someone's worst day to become your best day. And that is mentally kind of a difficult space to be in too, to stay positive around your own health. And then also, you know, I always tell transplant recipients, you're praying for the yes. You're not praying for anyone to die. You're praying for a yes, for a family to feel a sense of comfort in saying yes to giving life to someone else. But there's a lot of psychological things that go along into that as well. Someone said, I'm feeling so seen in this discussion. Thank you. So
Aww.
good. That's good. We want, you know, I think to, you know, Keira, to have this character that helps people feel seen, but also you just as an actor kind of opening up to your own your own things that you've been going through. I really appreciate that, because I think it helps people see that you're not just, you know, that you're able to tap into your own life experience to then play a character that helps other people feel seen as well.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think there's this propensity for actors, like you have to present as being this kind of, I don't know what, like, you know, the way you're supposed to present yourself in interviews and stuff is just this very relatable, but sort of carefree and, you know, everything's fine. I think it takes a lot, as much as it's our job to explore these things and empathize and like bleed on camera for people. I think there's also and I've felt it in my life too, where it's like, no, don't let people know you have this, or this is wrong. Like, just smile and answer the question, you know, properly, and don't bring yourself into it. And it's interesting. And I've fought that for a long time. You know, I'm 28 now, and I finally gotten to a point where I'm just like, no, I'm just going to talk about who I am. Like, you know, people can take it or leave it. But I think it's this weird thing with actors that, like, on one hand, you're supposed to, you know, access these emotions for people and then they'll love you for it, but you're also not supposed to really do that when it comes to talking about your own struggles. But I mean, I think, yeah, if it can help even, you know, anybody else who's struggling with, you know, anxiety or, you know, depression and whatever, like, my story can help you and realize that and the more you talk about it, the more you realize so many other people are dealing with the same thing. You know, that was my thing about even being on set, because I used to just like hide it, which makes it worse. Finally, I'll just be like, hey, I have an anxiety disorder. Just letting you know, if at some point while we're working together, I come up to you and tell you, like, this is what I need, please just like be aware of what's going on. Half the time they're like, oh, you too? You know, and that's, you know, and same with other actors, like so many other, I was having a meeting with another actor. We were just like meeting for a possible project. And this other actor I could kind of see that look in their eyes where they were just like fighting anxiety. And then they finally went, I'm really, really sorry. I'm having a panic attack right now. And I'm super embarrassed. And I was like, nope, you're the right person. I was like, pour the coffee out because that's not helping. And let's go for a walk. And, you know, we just need to get to a point, I think, as a society in general, whatever it is that you're going through, we should just feel like we can talk about it and bring it up to people. It'll be a much, I think, easier world to navigate if we get to that point.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think that idea of self-awareness, right? Where we're aware enough about what's going on, like Valen, right?
Yeah.
10 minutes before
I know.
going on, she's like, can you call me? Because my blood pressure is...
I mean, it's crazy. Stuff will come up when you don't want it or least expect it. I'm here, blood pressure is 180 over 100 something. I'm like, this can't be happening right now. This can't be happening right now. And then I've learned you just have to be honest and take the best care of yourself and be authentic. And like you said, Keira, so many other people are going through struggles too, and you can't just put on the perfect face like I get on here feeling awful and don't say anything and pretend I'm not. And that's not what resilience is about. I mean, you're not, that's just not good for you or anyone else. And for me, sharing my journey and being honest, like you said, Kier, so many other people, then I see the weight taken off of them. It's almost like you can visually see they're like, oh, me too. Okay, good. I'm not alone. And honestly, it's therapeutic for me talking about it. I mean, my dad just said this week, he goes the other route and keeps it inside, which is not healthy, and doesn't like to talk about what our family's been through. But for me, it's just helpful. He's like, I don't know how you talk about it every single day. He said that would just be so hard. He said about it taking strength, but actually for me, it's the other side where it's really therapeutic. And I think it helps me navigate just through all that I went through, and also give purpose to it and help channel it into something meaningful.
Yeah, no, my dad, when I was going through cancer, my dad was like, why are you posting so much? You know, like, don't let everyone know that that you're sick, right? Like, then future employers might look at that negatively or whatever. And I was just like, I feel like that's not where we're at in the world. I feel like as we share our journeys and our struggles and what we're going with, it actually creates a deeper connection, to us. And that when we are able, and I think that Hollywood's getting that too, right? Like, I think that characters now, the shows that we love, the characters they struggle, and they go through things that then we can connect to and struggle with too. Nobody wants to see just somebody who's doing all right all the time, because that doesn't make us feel better, because somebody just put it's okay to not be okay. Like, that's what we need right now in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I get sent scripts sometimes, and I'll read it and I'll be like sitting there and just kind of shaking my head or losing interest. And my partner Michelle will just be like, what's going on? And I'm like, I'm sorry, this is so boring. They're all so well adjusted. Like, this script is so boring. It's just about normal people. I mean, not normal, like, you know what I mean? People just sort of like, yeah, and there's places for that, for sure. Like, everybody needs to turn off sometimes. You want to watch like a reality show, or whatever it is, like something light. But like, for me, I've just never been drawn to that stuff. So it's like, I'll literally just feel my eyes kind of closing, because I'm just like, this character's just not interesting, So.
Yeah, you need something meatier, and you are pretty picky about what you take on in these roles. So I didn't really connect to that, but is part of what you're looking for in roles, those characters that are going through stuff and having to tap into resilience in order to kind of overcome.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's like, I'm pretty open. I don't have an idea of what I'm going to do next. I'm very chill about, I don't pursue scripts. Like, I just, whatever comes through, I read it. And I mean, I probably should do some lighter stuff. Probably would be a little easier on me, but it's just a natural thing. I'm just not like, those things don't spark my interest really. Your average rom-com script, it doesn't, there's not that magnetic thing where, I read it and I go, oh my God, I need to be a part of this, or like, I really want to. So yeah, it just seems to keep happening that way. So who knows, but.
Good. Well, we need you to keep playing those deep characters anyway. So, this isn't a panel on authenticity and representation. We did have a panel about that, inclusion and all of those kinds of things. But because Donate Life Hollywood really is interested in seeing authentic stories about organ donation, right? Not the scary sci-fi stuff, not the, chop shop in the back, scaring people about organ donation, but the authentic stories of overcoming and of donor family members and giving and generosity and love. And those are really kind of those core elements of what an organ donation and transplant story is all about. But there was something written about Atypical in particular that said inclusion in the media matters because it leads to inclusion in life. And so a better, there's folks from the autism community who basically spoke out and said, look, it matters how the entertainment industry shows and represents a character with autism, because people see that and then that's how they get a lot of their information. And we know that's true about organ donation. Like the vast majority of people, what they know about organ donation is from television. And so when there's fears and misconceptions and ooey gooey stuff that's happening and doctors doing things that aren't above board, then people get concerned about the donation process and don't want to be a part of it, and so opt out, and that could be costing lives. But one of the things that you had said yesterday here that I thought was really interesting was, like, 5 years ago, there was sort of an understanding that this representation matters and authenticity and inclusion, and inclusion not just in casting, but in the writer's room itself. So inclusion at sort of all levels when you're telling a story and how to tell an authentic story. But you talked about how so much happened in those 5 years from the first season to the last season, to really kind of explode this idea of inclusion on Atypical. So I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about that and your perception of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of wild because, for example, very common and fair, totally fair critique is, why was I cast to play Sam instead of somebody who was on the spectrum, who was actually on the spectrum. And it's interesting because, even, quite honestly, I don't even remember thinking about that 5 years ago when it was the casting process. And people will even kind of be like accusatory to me and be like, how dare you, kind of, why did you go do this? Which at the time I just thought I was doing my job, which is being an actor and, doing my best to do a good job with what the content that I get sent. But it's so interesting because I think people forget that, I mean, I thought we were 5 years ago, it felt like the world was already so progressive and everything was really moving in this direction. And I'm honestly stoked that only 5 years later, which is not a long time, we're already to a point where it's like, it feels a little bit like wild to think that that wasn't thought of, like it's really cool to me how far we've come in 5 years, especially in terms of inclusion and representation. And then you are, I believe, I don't know that all the details, but the Miracle Project, which is the group that we work with, that most of the actors that are on the spectrum on Atypical all came through that program. It's a theater program for people on the spectrum. I think, was talking to Elaine, who's amazing. She's basically runs the organization. She's there every day on set whenever any actors on the spectrum are there. She's there as a consultant and also, to just make sure everything, is super comfortable for everybody. And she's like amazing. And she was saying that she had been, I believe, brought on board for a show that is going to be another show that has all the lead casts are actors that are on the spectrum. Wow. I don't know how far along they are with releasing stuff about that, but she said she was stoked to have been asked to, because of her work on Atypical, they're actually doing a whole other show where every single every lead is on the spectrum. And I just thought, wow, that's incredible. 5 years, I love that. And I can't wait to see that show. So yeah, I think we're heading in the right direction. So yeah.
Well, I read too that there were some characters towards the last season on Atypical that were on the spectrum that played neurotypical characters. So it wasn't just autistic, actors playing autistic actors. It was autistic actors playing neurotypical actors,
And again, something I had never thought of. Again, even myself thinking I'm this super progressive person, wow, look at me. I really, I never thought of that even, it was like, of course we should have people on the spectrum, obviously once that was brought up, I was like, duh, yeah. And then it was like, and it was suggested by one of our consultants, was like, and if you're going to do that, you should also be doing the opposite as well. And I was like, again, it's amazing from my point of privilege, how much you just don't think of. And you're like, oh my God, that's the most obvious thing on the planet now that you said it. So yeah, no, I love that. I thought that was genius, honestly.
The same with, transplant recipients. There are a lot of transplant recipient actors who are like, oh, we could play transplant, people with cystic fibrosis who could play the people who have cystic fibrosis. There was one actor who was on a show that we awarded this year, and he ended up playing an organ donor, but he himself had multiple heart surgeries and wasn't a heart recipient, but was a heart patient. And so even that was sort of someone who had been through so many medical issues playing somebody who've been through a lot of medical issues. So, that kind of tie back there. We have just a couple more minutes. If anyone has questions, you can post them either in the Q&A or the chat. Just a lot of, Sam's character Casey is the one character that treats Sam like normal person. And there's a parallel in transplant because friends aren't quite sure what to say or are worried when they're responding to you as a transplant recipient. Do you notice that, Valen? Is there like at least your Noah always treats you normal?
Yeah, and I feel like something when being a transplant recipient that I thought of with Sam is lack of education, because sometimes if someone hears I got a transplant, they're like, oh, so you're good now. And obviously we're not good now. Like what happened this morning, hiccups happen, and it's not their fault that they don't understand if, they're healthy and not in the transplant road, but that's the importance, I think, of education. I think that's why I strive sharing my story so others learn, and then the people surrounding us can become more comfortable. And sometimes it's really nice to feel normal, if you want to say that, and healthy and be looked at that way versus looked at sick. Kind of like when something goes on and all of a sudden, my mom's face just drops to everything's going to go back to when it was really scary and I was super sick. And you're like, it doesn't have to be like that. But when a family greatly loves someone and supports someone, something like what Sam was enduring or transplant patients, it greatly impacts everyone around us.
Yeah, I think too, you talk about education, your patient education. And, sometimes you think of PowerPoint presentations and webinars, which you do webinars and do discussions and stuff, but really your mode of educating is storytelling, which is very Hollywood, is very just sharing yourself, sharing your story, sharing where you're at as a way of doing patient education, which obviously is very impactful.
Absolutely. We need to hear the real life stories. And that's why this morning I'm sitting here with my camera off and I was like, I refuse not to hop on here. Like, I can't do it. It would just kill me. And I thought, it's so powerful. Why not just join and share what's actually happening in my world this morning? And because people can kind of like you said, Kier, when you look at roles and it's too well adjusted of the characters, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, we shouldn't present ourselves as perfectly together all the time, because that's not what it's like behind the scenes. So to me, it means a lot to me to be able to be authentic and hopefully provide education and also comfort to others that are going through something this very day or a day to come, and they understand that they're not alone. Because when I was younger, I didn't have that. I didn't have that visual. I just had my parents. I didn't know anybody else with polycystic kidney disease or that went through a transplant. So I didn't have that role model to look towards. So I think that's what's really important to me today, is to be that role model for other people.
Great. Well, thank you. And Kier, thank you. And I know we're going to see you in the future on other roles. I know some people haven't finished binge watching season 4 of Atypical yet, so I don't know what's wrong with them, but they got to get with it. But we're going to see you in roles in the future, yes?
Yes. Yeah, I have some work lined up now, so I am enjoying my time off before the next gig. So yeah.
Good. Well, and in your time off, you like moved, and also
it doesn't feel like
there. So.
Yeah, I just got out of, it's super fun. I had to take the dog to the ER yesterday because she was having some issues. She's fine, but I was like, it's really, I don't know if anyone's been during the pandemic, but you basically, everything takes like hours and hours and hours, and you have to wait outside, and you know, it's so lots of fun stuff, but I'm going to try to enjoy the time I have left. And yeah, but thanks so much for having me on this.
Well, thank you. Thank you for spending your time with us and sharing, and for keeping, keep playing those amazing roles that really do touch people and help them feel. I mean, the fact that somebody on here was like, I feel so seen today. I think, Valen, that's really your goal in life, is to help people feel seen. And Kiera, I think it's kind of your goal in life too, to help people feel seen. So
I try to do, yeah, as much of that as possible, along with, all the other stuff, but yeah.
Okay. All right.
Kiera, it's such an honor to be able to spend this time with you. So thank you. My husband and I just loved Atypical, and then to have this opportunity really means a lot to me.
No, thank you. That means a lot to me. And you like jumping on here today through all of it is huge. So, thanks so much for also, I don't know, again, I'm stoked to have been here. So
good, excellent. Well, everyone's stoked then. All right, thank you all for everyone who has joined us, and we will have the recording up of this webinar as well in just a couple of days, and we'll promote that also. So thank you guys so much for being a part of this. Here's to resilience.
yes.
Bye-bye.